Hello there, Deepti. Alright, so excellent work here. Very impressed. Very clear opening. A great way to start. Just a small error here at 026 when you said whenever there is some emergency casualty. Don't say that. We'd say something like whenever there is an emergency or there are casualties because of a natural disaster, this organization comes forward. Or what's even better would be this organization stands up. This organization stands up and starts helping. But what I wanted to say was here at 026, there's a beautiful opportunity for a list. Okay, so what you could do would be whenever there is an emergency, such as a natural disaster, this could include flooding, forest fires, or even a drought. This organization steps up. That's what I wanted to say. Steps up and really starts helping. So there, what we did is we just modified the phrasal verb. It's slightly more accurate. Steps up. And also we just gave a list, show the examiner the vocabulary. Great work. So around here, and at the beginning as well, we're saying, I can hear, organization. Okay, we must pronounce every syllable. Organization. Organization. Okay? During the pandemic. We don't need during the pandemic time. Okay, during the pandemic. Okay, some of them went by foot, some of them travelled. No, we just have to use one verb there. Some of them travelled or some of them went. Okay, and I don't understand the phrase around here, break journeys. Some of them travelled in break journeys. I don't know what that means. You might have to explain that if there's certain sort of like things that are unique, in this case to India, your country, then you might want to just explain them. They were trying to do a fundraising for those people, or even better, they were trying to do a fundraising for this organization, or this NGO, non-governmental organization, or even better, they were trying to raise funds for this organization. Yeah, we wouldn't say we can say do a fundraising, okay, but that, I think, is just more accurate ways of saying it. Trying to raise funds, for example, use the verb instead of the noun, and this just helps us move along. But well done, Deepti. This was more of an improvement rather than a correction, so we're definitely on the right track. So around this point, you said this organization helps provide food, shelter, clothing, I think. No, you just said food and shelter, which is good. And there's a good little list. But in the writing course, and this goes for speaking, is when we're giving lists, they usually come in 3s or 5s. Okay? So what we could have done in this case, we could have extended it, and like I suggested at the beginning, add a few more terms. So we could do like food, shelter, emotional support, psychological support, and counseling for students or for people in need. And then if you really wanted to extend it a little bit further, more detail, you can say, for example, I heard of some people getting fresh food delivered to them when they didn't have any money, or something like that. Just a little example going into some detail. Okay, so another opportunity to improve here. You said they go to remote areas to support people. That's fantastic. Okay, it's really good, and you kind of given an example there, so that's excellent. Examples are great, Deepti, because they will help you get into more detail, and for more detail you'll need more vocabulary, so they'll help you to kind of like boost that lexical resource score. Now what I want to pick up on is rural people. Yeah, are they, let me just listen again. Okay, they go to rural areas to support people who need help. Great sentence there, and great use of the verb support. That's fantastic. What could we say instead of people? They go to, who are people in rural areas? Okay, we could go, so they support people in rural areas who need help. These might include farmers, farm workers, or even people, or even wives without jobs or income, or something like that, you know? Okay, so around here, around this point, we're starting to repeat ourselves. Okay, so just be careful of that. You already said food and shelter, you already said fundraising, and also you made a small mistake. Start to help two people. We don't say that. Start to help people. We don't need the two there. Great. So you said this organization is situated in many big cities. What can we say instead of big, Deepti? Well, we could say many major cities, many significant cities, and then again, you gave two for your list, so what could we do? We could give three, isn't it? You know, like Calcutta, Bangalore, and I don't know, Bombay. I don't know. Okay, so just you know, add that list there, and just also be aware of sort of like basic words. Other basic words that are quite common might be big, small, you know, do, be, bad, good. Okay. You cannot say they have connectivity to remote areas. You'd have to say so that they are connected to remote areas. Well done as well for wrapping that up and finishing. Also, it's probably a little bit over, and maybe if we'd have skipped the repetition in the middle, we could have been a little bit closer to 2 minutes. So just pay attention, you know, next time try and avoid that. Also, you might want to consider, you could have easily mentioned the conditionals. Okay, so for your example, you could have said, for example, if there was a flood in, sorry, I always get mixed up. It's if there were a flood in, I don't know, if there was a flood, sorry, I was read the first time. If there were a flood in, for example, if there were a flood in Bangalore, they would send their team to support the local residents in the rural areas. Yeah? And now we've just demonstrated to the examiner that we can are more than competent with higher level vocabulary, higher level grammatical structures. Okay, so a bit of a rocky start there. Okay, so the question is, how can people make sure, basically, to have a balanced life? You know, or how can people make sure that work doesn't dominate their personal lives? Okay, and around here we had a small mistake. We just listen again. I think people can ensure that. No, what we need to say is that I think people can ensure that work doesn't dominate their lives in the following ways. Okay, the mistake was at around 52, to make sure their work can keep a balance. No, in the following ways. Okay, because it's sort of like asking for solutions. How can people ensure? Well, they can ensure by doing this, X, Y, Z. Okay, a model answer could just give like a few different reasons, pretty much like the essays. You know, we could give a few reasons and then give an example. You know, so we could say something like, in the following ways, by practicing, by making sure, by joining a sports club, by putting a cap on the amount of hours they work, and possibly by taking regular holidays. For example, it is common for some professionals to negotiate all the year's holidays in advance to make sure that they are not overworked. Okay? Just an example then. Okay, so around this time you said their working timing. No, their work time, or even better, their hours worked should not surpass, for example, should not surpass the 8 hours. should be completed in those hours only, not should be complete. Okay, spend the time that is left to the family. No, spend the time that is left with the family. Okay, but I think, Deepti, I think what you would really benefit from is a structure for your part 2s. Okay, so it seems like you're working methodically through each of the bullet points, which is fantastic. And don't underrate this skill. I see students every day just go off and talk about whatever they want to and not follow the card. This does not seem the case with you, which is excellent. So keep doing that. Keep following the card. Now, for each point, okay, and not for each point, but for where it's relevant or where you get the opportunity, just say, for example, yeah? Say, for example, and then give that example, and then just carry on. But just try and keep to the card. So we'll look at the card and then we can give a reason. We can go through the points, and then when there's an opportunity for example, and sometimes there might be an opportunity for a hypothetical example. But if you're preparing in advance with your 1 minute preparation time, just sort of like say, write it down, make a note, and say, okay, for this one, example, hypothetical, helping, disaster in Bangalore, flooding. If there were a flood in Bangalore, for example, or in this case, if a working man or woman, or if a working professional feels like they are not spending enough time with their family and not getting this balance, then they could set up procedures to make sure they get the balance. For example, they could set timers on their electrical devices to tell them to stop working, just to remind them to go back home to their families, something like that. Okay, the content just has to be realistic. The examiner's obviously not looking for sort of like super intelligent answers. It just has to be realistic with some decent structures in there, and clear and grammatically accurate, of course. Yes, I think people will have to work longer in the future. Yeah? Okay, great example here, but we needed a comparison. They have to spend more time than they used to learn new things. Okay, we missed the than. Yeah, they have to spend more time than they used to spend. It's exactly around here. A great example. This would be a real good opportunity, For example, during the pandemic, a lot of teachers suddenly had to start to learn how to use Zoom, So, yeah, in part 3, okay, this is the structure I usually teach. It's sort of like paraphrase the question, reflect it, okay, ideally in the same tense that you heard it, add a little bit of enrichment, like, yes, definitely, I do think people have to work in the future. And then we say, this is because, and we explain, and then we can give an example. Okay? So that's the basic structure, similar to task 2. No, I believe there's going to be longer hours. That doesn't make sense, okay? It means basically, longer hours would mean an hour would be 65 minutes, 70 minutes, okay? Which is probably not what we wanted to say, but I think what we wanted to say was, it was a good summary, so keep doing those summary answers, like the conclusion, but we need to be a little bit more accurate and say, yes, I think people, or workers, are definitely going to be working longer hours in the future. Okay, around here, we can't say very essential. It's redundant, okay? If it's essential, it's sort of like, it's critical, it's absolutely necessary. We can't say it's very absolutely necessary. It's essential, so it's like the maximum degree of necessary already. So we don't need the amplifier, we don't need the very necessary there. It's redundant. That a computer is needed, or computer skills are needed. Great vocabulary though. Programming skills are needed. This was fantastic. I love this answer. You know, hybrid, this idea of the hybrid using computer knowledge as well. Fantastic answer there. It's begging for an example, you know. For example, teachers nowadays also have to be proficient with their computer skills, or have to be proficient, have to have proficiency using a laptop and using web devices such as Zoom and Skype and whatnot, so as to teach and train effectively. You know, a good example there, a solid real world example would have helped a lot. Great final answer. Excellent and accurate use of the relative clauses as well. Just one small improvement though. You said it's not good. You know, remember what I said at the beginning about using that basic vocabulary? What could we say instead of not good? We could say it has a poor end result, or the result is suboptimal. You know, but that was a fantastic answer. Great work. Okay, Deepti, send me an email, please. Reply to the email, which includes this feedback, and just tell me your situation. You know, are you working at the moment? Do you plan to go to the UK? Do you want to go to university? Tell me how you're preparing, your goals, and when you've got your exam. Thanks.